Hi students, welcome to part 3 of Kathmandu lesson. In this lesson, yesterday I stopped where he had bought a corn and ate that corn, and the corn was rubbed with salt, chili powder and lemon. A couple of love story comics and even a reader's students, a couple of love story comics and even a Reader's Digest. All this I washed down with Coca-Cola and a nose-eating orange drink and feel much the better for it. See here, what did he do? After that, he bought a couple of love stories. Couple of means two. Two love story comic books were bought by the narrator, and even a reader's digest later, even reader's digest, that book also it was bought, and reader's digest means it in any book like forward or what is the importance in that book, importance of that book, etc., it is given clearly. That's why reader's digest, all this I washed down with. So he completely finally he concluded and he wanted to stop his satisfaction, and he wants to finish his journey by buying Coca-Cola, and by drinking that Coca-Cola he wants to finish that enjoyment. On nauseating orange drink, nauseating means sickening. Sickening means as he is going to sick. That's why he wants to drink Coca-Cola, and Coca-Cola as well as orange drink, and feel much the better for it. After drinking those orange and Coca-Cola, he felt somewhat better. Now I considered what route I should take back home if I were propelled by enthusiasm for travel per se. Later, he considers what route he has to take back to home. Now he wants to go to his home, which route is better to go, or which route should be taken by him. He is thinking and he wants to go back to home. If I were propelled by enthusiasm, propelled means to cause to move in a certain direction. To cause to move in a certain direction, it is called propelled. If he were directed to go to somewhere else, or directed to go, if he were go to choose different direction by enthusiasm for travel per se. Per se means by itself. If he wants to travel by itself, which is caused to towards different directions, are propelled, he wants to go. I would go by bus. He was that direction is I would go by bus. He wanted to go by bus and train to Patna. He wanted to go by bus and he wanted to go by train, and then sail up to gangs past Banaras to Allahabad. Banaras to Allahabad, he wants to sail, means here he wants to use boat. He wants to use boat in the river Ganges, then up the Yamuna. After crossing that river Ganges, he wants to reach the Yamuna river. Through that Yamuna river, or via that Yamuna river, he wants to reach Agra to Delhi. But I am too exhausted and homesick. He wants to go to different places: Yamuna river, Ganges river, Agra to Delhi, Allahabad, Banaras, etc., etc. He wanted to visit those places, but he was Vikram said, the narrator and author was too exhausted. Here, exhausted means he was too tired and he got homesick. He wants to visit his home. See, generally the people, those who are far away from their home, they get homesick. See, my dear students, students who are living in hostels, ask them. They get homesick. They want to visit their home for a week, weekly once or weekly twice or monthly once or twice. They want to visit. It is called homesick. They want to visit. Or not only that one, but also if you live far from your house, you may get homesick. Here, narrator also got homesick and today is the last day of August. Now he remembered today is the last day of August, that is August 31st. So he finally decided that he wanted to return back to his home. He told himself and he moved directly towards home. Finally he had decided at any cost he wanted to visit his home. That's why he moved towards his that direction propelled towards his home. That's why he moved towards home and he entered a Nepal Airlines office. Finally he entered into the Nepal Airlines office. There he bought a ticket for tomorrow's flight. For tomorrow's flight to go to his home, he bought a ticket. I look at the flute seller while he was returning from that Nepalese Airlines office. When he was visiting, he had seen fruit seller who is standing in a corner of the square. There is a square. In that square, there is a flute seller. That's from that flute seller. Near the hotel or near the square, he had seen a flute seller. He wanted to buy that flute and he wanted to see that flute seller. In his hand is a pole with an attachment at the top from which 50 or 60 bansuris protrude in all directions. In his hand, in his right hand or in his left hand, there is a pole with an attachment. There is a pole with an attachment. There is a pole. That pole has an attachment. That attachment at the top from which 50 or 60 bansuris are there. The meaning of bansuri: a bamboo transverse flute used in the classical music of North India. The North India, there are musical instruments which are made up of bamboo. Those bamboo instruments, especially here, bansuris means flutes. There are how many? 50 to 60 bansuris protrude in all directions. In that pole, there is an attachment. In that attachment, 50 or 60 bansuris are there in all directions, like the quills of porcupine. All those bansuris, all those flutes seem to be quills of porcupine. Quill means the lower shaft of a feather, especially the region lacking barbs. The lower shaft of a feather, especially the region lacking barbs. And the meaning of porcupine. Porcupine means an animal covered with long, thin, sharp parts. An animal covered with long, thin, sharp parts, quills which it can lift up to protect itself. It lifts its those quills to protect itself when it is attacked. When it is attacked, that animal lifts its quills. The simple meaning of porcupine is in Telugu, Mullapandi. Mullapandi. When that porcupine or mullapandi, when it is attacked by another animal, it raises its quills. Those are they look like they look like spikes, and those are very sharp. So all those bansuris, 50 or 60 bansuris, they seem to be quills of porcupine. They are of bamboo. All the bansuris are made up of bamboo. They are cross flutes and recorders. From time to time, he stands the pole on the ground, selects the flute and plays for a new few minutes. From time to time, for some time, he chooses another flute and that flute is played by him. After some time or after a few minutes, another flute is selected by him, recorder flute or cross flute or bansuri, different flute. Another flute is selected by him and it is played by him. In this way, he stands there and he plays those flutes, and finally he sells those bansuris or those flutes. The sound rises clearly above the noise of the traffic and the hawkers' cries. All the hawkers are shouting cry loudly, and there is the noise of the traffic, but the sound of flute is very, very, very pleasant, and it is very clear. That sound is very clear. He plays slowly. Flute seller, he plays slowly, meditatively, like in Hindu religion, Lord Krishna, he plays that flute very quietly, very skillfully, and very meditatively. Here, meditatively means thoughtfully, and it is believed that when Lord Krishna, whenever a flute is played by Lord Krishna, all the gopikas they come and they gather around Lord Krishna, and when that flute is played by Lord Krishna, what do we call those hills are raised, and oxen they listen carefully, and cows listen carefully, all listen carefully, and that sound is a flute sound is a very, very pleasant sound. That's why he says the sound rises clearly above the noise of there is the noise of the traffic, there is shouts of the hawkers, but still the pleasant sound of the flute is very, very, very clear. He plays that flute slowly, meditatively. Here, meditatively means thoughtfully, without excessive display. He doesn't shout out his wares. He doesn't shout off his wares. Here, wares. Wares means goods which are going to be sold. Wares means goods. I haven't written, but wares means which are sold. Goods. Wares means. So he doesn't shout his goods like flutes, some of flutes are there, many flutes are there, different flutes are there, cross flutes are there, recorders are there. In that way, he doesn't shout. Just it is a skillful business for him. Of him, he is playing that flute, and those who listen that flute, they are attracted towards that sound of the or melody of that flute, and immediately they go to that flute and they buy those different flutes. It is a skillful business of that flute seller. That's why he says he doesn't shout off his wares. Occasionally he makes a sale. Occasionally he sells those flutes, but in a curiously offhanded. Offhanded means casual, not showing much interest in something. Nah, he doesn't show much interest in something, way or as if this were incidental to his enterprise. So enterprise means here business. Sometimes he breaks off playing to talk to the fruit seller. Sometimes he stops playing those flutes and he speaks the to the fruit seller. I imagine that this has been the pattern of his life for years. So the narrator imagined, so this is the life of him for many years. It has been the life of him, or it has been the business of him for many years. For those years, maybe 5 years or 10 years, 15 years or 20 years. But it has been the business of him. He imagined, the narrator imagined himself, he plays the flutes and he stops for sometimes, and he uses different flutes, and later he sells occasionally, later he stops and he speaks to fruit seller. This is the process of his business for so many years. The narrator thought, or narrator imagined himself. Later, I find it difficult to tear myself away from the square. Flute music always does this to me. So, from that flute plays from that corner, he doesn't want to go to anywhere because he is attracted towards those flutes, that melody sound. That's why he found it is difficult to tear myself. So he found himself it is difficult to leave from that place, away from the square. Flute music always does this to me. So completely the narrator Vikram Seth is attracted towards the sound, melody sound of the flute. It is at once the most universal and most particular of sounds. Those melody sounds are universal sounds, and those are particular sounds. Those are different sounds. Most of the people where they might have listened the sound or music of the flute. When that music, that sound music of the flute is heard by us, it gives pleasant mind. We feel pleasantly. What a music it is! What a music! And when that flute is played by someone, or when that flute is played by us, we feel very happy, very pleasantly, and very quietly, very calmly, and our mind wants to take rest, and our mind wants to listen that sound continuously. That's why here the narrator also attracted, he is also attracted towards that melody music of flute. There is no culture that doesn't have its flute. The reed name. Here, narrator mentions different flutes. Reed name. There is a flute. That flute name is reed name. The recorder. It is also another flute. The Japanese shakuhachi. The Japanese shakuhachi. It is also another flute. The deep bansuri of Hindustani classical. The deep bansuri of Hindustani classical. It is also another type of flute. Classical music. The clear or breathy flutes of South America. The clear or breathy flutes of South America. South American flutes are there. Japanese, Hindustani classical flutes are there. Japanese flutes are there. In that way, many flutes are there. The high pitched Chinese flutes are there. The high pitched sound of which produce the music or sound of China flute. China flutes. China in China also we can get bamboos. So China mobiles, like China mobiles, China products. Towards China products, many people are attracted. Now many China products are banned by the Indian government. Anyhow, high pitched Chinese flutes are also there. Each has its specific fingering and compass. Each flute has specific fingering. See, to play the flute, specific fingering is there. Sa, re, ga, ma, pa, da, ni, sa, de. In that way, while playing, while exhaling, or while playing the flute, the player of the flute, he has to uh, hold the holes for some time, and he has to raise his fingers. That's why he says Each flute has its specific fingering and compass. It views its own specific associations. Here, fingering means way of placing the fingers to play different notes. This meaning is given in our textbook. Fingering means way of placing the fingers to play different notes. Different notes are played by flute, music players of flute. It views its own associations. So different flutes give different musics, different sounds. Yet to hear any flute is, it seems to me, to be drawn into the commonality of all mankind. When all flutes sounds or music is heard by the narrator, he feels very very happy and he thinks about mankind. To be moved by music closet in its phrases and sentences to the human voice. Now he feels that when that music is heard by him, he is very, very, very close to the music, and he is very close to the human voice. Its motive force too is living breath. It too needs to pause and breathe before it can go on. The player who is playing that flute, he has to pause for some time and he has to take breath and he has to inhale and he has to exhale, and it is a very tough job for the players of the music flute musical instrument players. It is a very tough job for him, but anyhow, the when that sound or that music is heard by his, we can remember human voice. My dear students, I am stopping here. Conclusion and theme of this lesson will be taught in the next part. It means tomorrow. And another poem also will be taught for your half yearly syllabus. Until then,